Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know, I'm Kevin Clegg, the fifth of John and Eileen's 7 children. I want to thank all of you for coming today to celebrate this wonderful life of our husband, our father, our grandfather, our uncle, our brother, our son, our commissioner, our captain, and our friend. Family and community meant the world to Dad, so to have his siblings, his in-laws, nieces and nephews, Father Chris, Father Gary, Sister Anne Marie, cherished members of the Fun Bunch, and every single one of you, his and our dear friends here today, would mean the world to Dad. I stand up here as a representative of my mom, my siblings, and in-laws, and Dad's 21 awesomely righteous grandchildren. Their thoughts, ideas, stories, and lives all went into this eulogy, and it is my great honor to present it to you today. Now, the Cleggs are many things, and among them, storytellers, weepers, and sweaters. So you may be seeing all or some of those things up here today, and so at the outset, I beg your indulgence for what may transpire over these next 15 minutes. And those of you who have asked me, yes, we do have a signal for one of the Clegg brothers to come up should the need arise. Now, all of you know John Clegg, and so you are aware that he is one of the world's great remaining grammarians. The good nuns at Our Lady of Lourdes Grammar School drilled those lessons into him, and he never, ever forgot them. Not a single one. So, I'd like to apologize in advance for any grammatical slip-ups today. And just between you and I do want to let you know that me being up here today is a responsibility I take very serious. And yes, Padre, those 3 grammatical errors in the last sentence were intentional and put in there just for you. John Charles Clegg was born December 27th, 1936 in Queens, New York, the 6th child of Mildred Maringer Clegg and Ambrose Augustine Clegg. His father taught him chemistry for 40 years in the New York City public school systems and got married at the age of 39. He set high expectations for his children, but as Dad described him, he could be a distant and authoritarian figure at times to his children. Our dad took note and vowed to do things a little bit differently. Dad's mother, Mildred Maringer, was a brilliant and loving woman who graduated from Barnard College, married Ambrose, and then went on to raise 8 highly accomplished children. Dad loved his mother very deeply, and along with his siblings, honored, treasured, and supported her throughout her life. Dad loved coming from a large family and stayed connected throughout his life to his siblings, Ambrose Clegg, George Clegg, Fran Feeney, Millie Ackerley, Mary Ann Clegg, Alice Wolftyke, and Paul Clegg. And we are greatly honored to have his siblings, Alice and Paul, with us here today, along with his beloved in-laws from the Parkchester days, Peg Swearingen, Jenny Hoynes, and his brother-in-law, John Deary, who he spent hours with talking about the great New York City basketball players. Now, in decoding our dad's life, a good place to start is with this. He was a math major in the School of Humanities at a liberal arts Catholic college. That's a lot to unpack. The rational, logical, and list-making brain of the mathematician, housed in the philosopher's questioning mind, shaped by the world's great arts and letters, all grounded in a strong Christian Catholic faith. Our dad lived his life every day through deeds. The doing, not the talking, was what was important. Now, our father wasn't perfect, But if you know his beloved wife of nearly 60 years, Eileen, who happens to head up the editorial board here, you'll know the rest of that sentence was deleted. I think her exact words were, "Hit him with the good stuff." And so it begins. Dad was born into a home on Fairbury Avenue where there were high expectations and strict discipline. And Dad lived up to that call. He was a valedictorian of his grammar school and senior class president in his high school. And in a class of 600 students, he took home honors for academics, sports, and just to make it look easy, best looking. Although, with his trademark self-deprecating humor, Dad was always quick to add, now admittedly, it was an exceptionally ugly class. A standout all-county high school basketball player, Dad earned a full scholarship for academics and athletics to Manhattan College in the Bronx. And in his single season of baseball, he was named all-county and led the league in hitting. In college, he played at the real Madison Square Garden, competed in the NIT and NCAA tournaments, and won the Holiday Festival. And in that epic run, his Jaspers knocked off Ohio State, Notre Dame, and West Virginia, who just happened to be led by a guy named Jerry West. Dad graduated and took on a teaching fellowship at the University of Detroit, and then he began his career at Sperry Gyroscope, where he worked on the first commercial computer, the UNIVAC 1. He moved to Figgy's ATO and SMG as an information systems senior executive. He then achieved his corporate aspirations by becoming the chief information officer for Standard Products, a Fortune 500 company here in Cleveland. Then, at the young age of 58, Dad retired from corporate America to take a job with an entrepreneurial company with a catchy name, Clegg Industries. Founded and headed by his third child, Tim, Dad and Mom spent 10 years as brand ambassadors, corporate gadflies, and trade show presenters extraordinaire. Dad was always humble about his corporate accomplishments, not because he wasn't proud of them, but when he was not at work, he liked to focus on family and community. Now, like all true great New Yorkers, Padre learned life's most important lessons from the institutions right on his block: his home, his church, his school, and his playground. So many of the lessons that he would come to hold dear and share throughout his life were learned the hard way, the right way, on his beloved basketball courts. Toughness, fair play, teamwork, you get what you earn, victories and defeats. Man-to-man defense, the back door, move without the ball, pressure with the pinky and thumb, box out, the set shot, and then the jumper. Starting with Braddock Park, just a block away from his home, and then onto his high school and college courts, his decade on the middle school courts as CAA commissioner, the hours and years playing with any willing participant at the rec center courts, and of course, the thousands of games at CFHS, the captain perched high above the parquet court, taut and tense, proud and poised. Our dad also loved school and education, being a student and a teacher. His parents were both teachers, as were numerous siblings, and knowledge was held in very high esteem in that home in Queens. Dad worked hard on his own education and then put countless hours of support into his children and grandchildren's schoolwork. Dad's fondness for school and the high expectations he maintained for himself, his children, and his grandchildren was perfectly summed up by his favorite and oft-repeated aphorism, "Bees are only good for honey." Our father was also a man of strong faith. He was well steeped in the church's history, the communion of saints, the great teaching orders. He knew his Latin Mass and loved the old chants, hymns, and prayers. He read Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine, which led us to Merton and Dorothy Day. His was a simple but not easy belief system. Do the right thing. Stay close to the Lord. Be honest and a person of your word. He liked to quote Mother Teresa in saying, "God didn't call me to be successful. He called me to be faithful." Dad and Mom found this community of St. Joan of Arc and made it their spiritual home for 50 years, throughout which he maintained an extremely strict, no-nonsense in the pew policy for his 7 children, and if we're being honest, for his wife, too. Any non-liturgical talking or fooling around would be met with an immediate dark stare and arched eyebrow that made it abundantly clear that all shenanigans would cease immediately, or else. At its core, Dad's faith was about service and selflessness and love, trying to follow Jesus' teachings and putting them into practice. He led by example, and I have no doubt his children and grandchildren are all the better for it. As Proverbs teaches us, the righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Now, our dad's final and most beloved pillar was home. Family and community made up Dad's world. I knew this was going to be the hard part. And that family for the past 60 years started with Eileen, his redhead from Parkchester, the charming, beautiful, optimistic heartbeat of the family, his life partner. Eileen Grace of House Deary, first of her name, the mother of 7, grandmother of 21, and beloved of an entire village. Thank you for your Game of Thrones fans for laughing at that. Mom and Dad met back in 1957 on a harbor cruise while on dates with other people. Mom chatted for a few minutes with this John Clegg and then said to herself, "That's the man I'm going to marry." And from there, things got interesting fast. Married in 1959 and then 7 kids in 6.5 years, thanks to the twins. They set up homes, first in Parkchester in the Bronx, then in Comac on Long Island, and then the big move in 1969 to this beautiful town. Dad loved chagrin right from the very beginning. And when this New York City boy was asked how long it took him to adjust to small town life in Chagrin Falls, his reply was always about 5 minutes. Now, as head of a bustling household, Dad was a rule maker and a rule enforcer. He had his yellow legal pad and his 14-inch long scissors, and he was not afraid to use them to create binding legislation. Such protocols were often enacted in response to emergency situations, none more dire when the tub in the kids' bathroom sprung a leak in the late 70s. Being the handyman that he was, Dad ignored the leak, ruled the shower off limits for 25 years, and marched his 7 kids through one remaining shower each morning. Never one to tolerate the randomness of nature or teenagers' sleep patterns, Padre created and posted a detailed shower schedule governing morning bathing times, breaking down the morning hours into 10-minute increments for the boys and 15 increments for the girls. Dad processed an orderly flow of cleansing and ensured a timely arrival at the bus stop each day. At the bottom of the schedule, posted just below his cardinal rule of 1 towel per person per day maximum, Dad included a clever campaign tagline that married his love for the literal with a clever little turn of phrase. It read simply, if you miss your appointed shower time, you stink. While a strict disciplinarian who could put the fear of God into you in a hurry, Dad was also a deeply caring parent. Each one of his 7 children has multiple stories of times of crisis and confusion when Dad's creative problem solving, protective instincts, and strong shoulders were the first place to turn for help. The math major brain with the empathetic humanities heart helped all of us unlock many of life's thornier challenges. Ours was a household of love and respect, expectations and comfort, humor and play. And as Dad grew older and grandchildren came on the scene, we got to see a softer and more playful side of him. Freed up from parental responsibilities, Dad luxuriated in his ever-expanding flock. Never missing a birthday, a holiday, or any type of accomplishment, no matter how small, Dad was always there with his love and support and a nice check. Whether baiting a hook, working through math problems at his kitchen table, or sneaking off to McDonald's for a shake, Dad loved serving as the Pied Piper to his 21-strong army. And for 20 years, Dad made it possible for the entire family to vacation together in Chautauqua. Mom often speaks of those 20 summers where the captain could spend all day on the lake in his boat with his visiting children and grandchildren as among his greatest joys. To see Dad with his 21 grandchildren, from Kate down to Jackson and Will, was truly to see the manifestation of love. And that love and those lessons do not end with his death. They will be passed down for generations to come. This is the legacy of our father, cultivated from his schools, his playgrounds, his church, and his home. And so to close, I offer one final anecdote that I think helps to frame up who Dad was and what he meant to all of us. It was 1984, and I was home on break from college. I was telling Dad about a book I had read called The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, whose premise was that humans all live in fear of death, and so to hide from that, we build up a series of illusions, wealth, status, possessions, to protect us from the fact of our own mortality. And for Becker, religion and faith were either the ultimate illusion or the ultimate truth. He was never able to reconcile that conflict, never able to offer a clear argument in favor of either position. I don't remember everything Dad said in that conversation, but from his mathematician meets humanitarian heart and mind, I do recall his saying, "Well, Kevin, that's where faith comes in. Yes, as humans, we are all going to die. But while we are alive, we have to make choices about the people we want to be, the beliefs we want to hold, and the lives we want to live." And in the end, our Dad chose a life of faith and service, of selflessness and love. So as we look back on this singular life of John Charles Clegg and send him forward to his final reward in heaven, I think Dad's final wish for us would be that we use his life and his choices of faith and service, and above all love, as a beacon to guide all of us always home.